Um,
All
all
right.
right, awesome.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. I'm Himanshu from Biconomy. I'm working as a developer relations engineer here. And today, in this session, we'll be talking about, as Kevin mentioned, we'll first discuss what Biconomy does and the product offering that we have. And then we will see, we'll go through our docs and then we'll understand how you can use the Biconomy infra to do a simple transaction that we can see. All right, I will share my screen and then let's get started. So everyone can see the screen?
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so let's start with what Biconomy does. So Biconomy provides account abstraction infrastructure. So what that means is, so to give a brief about account abstraction, it was released. It was part of ERC 4337. Where the idea of account abstraction is to elevate the user experience or how we have been interacting with the account so far. Now it could be the EOA account or how you typically interact with any dApp. So account abstraction introduced the concept of smart accounts, where we have the accounts which are sort of smarter than the EOA accounts. So the EOA accounts usually have some limitations that you let's say you lose the private key of an account. There's no way for you to recover that account, and if that account belongs to you, there's no way you can transfer the ownership of that account to someone else. And then there have been some UX improvements around the gasless transactions as well. So most of the dApps face an issue where users are supposed to have the native token to do a transaction on any blockchain. So that's where the gasless transactions come into picture, that either the dApp can pay or you can set up a paymaster to pay for the transactions. So
Can
Biconomy has.
can I hop in here real quick just to give everyone a little bit of a background? So we've done a couple of sessions with some smart wallets. And I just wanted to call out that what you're talking about is how those smart wallets are actually built, correct?
Right, that's correct. So
Awesome.
yeah, recently I think Coinbase also launched the smart wallet. So that's also based on the account abstraction concept. So we can understand, we can learn more about how you can build those or how you can integrate it in your dApps as well directly.
Awesome. Yeah.
So essentially, account abstraction has its own infra components. So the two major ones are bundler and paymaster. And then the output of that is essentially the smart accounts. Right. So Biconomy has an SDK where you can, using this SDK, you can essentially create smart accounts, and you can use Biconomy bundler, and similarly you can use Paymaster as well. And you can essentially use these bundlers if you want to use some other smart accounts also. So there are multiple smart account providers. So you can, if you only want to use the infra components, you can just go ahead and use the bundler and paymaster as well with other smart accounts also. So these are modular components, and you are free to choose any other provider if you wish to as well. So let's go into the major the SDK, which includes all of these component in it. And we also actually recently released this React framework as well around the smart accounts. So we have the core SDK where you can you can install and you can create a smart account if you are running your app in the node. And simultaneously, if you just want to build it in the front end, it's advisable to use the React hooks that we have released recently. So I would first start with a simple example, and then we can understand how like all the components are like tied back, and then we can like discuss in more detail based on the example that we're gonna see. So
Cool.
yeah. So what we do essentially is like the idea here is that we want to do a transaction in a gasless manner, meaning that like whenever I log into a DApp, I do not necessarily want to have, let's say, if the DApp is on Ethereum, I do not necessarily want to have Ether in my wallet. I should be able to do a transaction without holding Ethereum. So uh, and there is like another very important concept of like having the different kind of like account, like how you log in with your account as well. For this example, we will consider that okay, the user is using the EOA as their signer. So like in the account abstraction concept, what we essentially do is we create a smart account which holds all your tokens, and the others, the EOA wallet just acts as a signer. So
Mm.
essentially, you are decoupling both the things so that, let's say, if you lose the private key also, your tokens are not like at risk. Uh, and like that's the entire concept around like, decoupling the signing and how your tokens are stored. So all your tokens will now be stored in the smart account. And how you can create a smart account is like you just need to pass the private key of the EOA wallet with which you want to create a smart account, and then you can pass the bundler URL. There is a like you can either get the bundler URL from the dashboard, and there is a testnet bundler URL which you can publicly use as well. And then based on
So
the
the
uh,
bundler URL is almost just like an RPC URL, correct?
yes, that's almost like an RPC URL. So let's look at the example where, and before that, I just want to showcase the Biconomy dashboard as well. Yeah. So this is essentially like how the dashboard looks, and you can easily get the testnet bundler URL, which is same for all the chains. You just need to type the chain ID here. For example, like for Amoy testnet or for Sepolia testnet, you can just replace the corresponding chain ID, and you can pass the bundler URL in there. So yeah. So you can just like, yeah, you can just pass the bundler URL here. And then since we are talking about a gasless transaction, it requires you to set up a paymaster as well. So we can again go back to the dashboard and we can create a paymaster here. I have created one for Amoy. And then you can either, so this is how the paymaster will look, and you can get the API key from here, and you will need to fund the gas tank. So essentially, like
Mm.
you can like deposit funds into this gas tank, and you can withdraw the funds. You can also set up like some rules around how the gas tank will be used. Like you can either set up some spending rules, like if you want the gas fee to be controlled, and if you want to set a gas usage limit for each user as well. So all of those can be done here, and you can get the paymaster API key from the dashboard. That's all the config required to create a smart account. The
Can I
paymaster
ask
API
a
key,
quick question?
sure.
On the private key part, do you actually have to paste your like private key in there?
Yeah. This is like a backend example. This
Uh-huh.
is the Node.js example where you will need to put. Otherwise, in the front end, you can like just sign it like we
Oh,
normally do.
okay. So through that dashboard you showed us, like I could just sign it through there.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, cool. Awesome.
So and you can pass the key here, and then that's how like your account will be created. And then essentially like smart account, like using the smart account, you can do all the transaction. Here, yeah, I think, yeah, so I will actually show it here. Yeah,
Do you
so
mind just zooming in on the text a little bit? It's a little small.
okay.
Could you
The coding skill you're talking about?
yeah, it's just a little small to see the code. If you could zoom in like Command plus or something, I think usually makes the text bigger. Yeah, there we go. Awesome.
Okay. So this is the same way like we just saw, like this is how you can create a smart account. So I will actually
Mm,
try to run uh, not this one. Yes. So what happens here is we pass the bundler URL, and this is the smart account address that gets created. So now with this smart account, like you can like what you can do is you can if you want to execute a transaction where you want to create like where you want to mint like a token, you can pass that particular contract address here, and you can pass the contract on which you are executing it and the data that you want to pass. So in the smart account, like there are the functions that we just talked about, like they all are like exposed here, like how you can create the smart account, what all fields you need to pass to, and like each and every field you can find the information here. And the send transaction that we just so it essentially like accepts uh, two basic values, like to the contract address and the data that you want to pass. Any transaction that you can execute with an EOA can be done using a smart wallet. The only difference is that the smart account requires you to, have those funds in the smart account. Like most people like
mm,
uh, face difficulty in understanding the concept of, having the two wallets. But that's where this interesting piece also comes into picture, that you don't necessarily need to have an EOA as a signer. You can have, let's say, like you can use your email for the signer, or you can use a passkey for the signer. So these are the all the signer examples that we have. And like you can essentially, like let's say, use magic to use like a web 2 kind of login that we
oh,
usually
nice.
have. Yes, so smart accounts are signer agnostic. Essentially, like you don't need to go via EOA only, but it's just people are usually familiar with the EOA. That's why like it's more like uh, visible in the examples.
So we actually had Capsule and Privy on both, so that's cool to just see. Yeah, this
Yeah.
is exactly what they use under the hood, basically.
Yep, yep. So what you are essentially doing is you're passing the signer as the ether signer here, and then that's how you are creating the account. And you can set up in the capsule dashboard, you can get their provider URL, and like that's how you can create the signer. So this does not require like a user to have a, an EOA wallet. So this is pretty cool if you want to onboard Web2 users onto your dApp. They don't need to learn anything about the private key, or, and all the risk that it comes along. And then definitely the gasless transaction is something that gets used by a lot of our clients to do a transaction. The other interesting aspect is like you can also pay for a transaction in ERC20 token as well. So for example, like you have USDC and you still want to do a transaction, you can use it. You can use the ERC20 mode of the paymaster, and you can specify like which token you're paying with, and that's how like you can sponsor your transaction as well. And there are like a list of the tokens that we support on each chain. So you can find the list here, and these are currently the number of chains that we are live on. So I mean, feel free to try out any of these. And so this is about the
So
basic.
Biconomy is basically supports these tokens for the swap, right?
Yes,
And so you guys do all the heavy lifting behind the scenes within the bundler to make that possible, correct?
exactly, that's right. Yeah, and also I just wanted to showcase like a simple transaction as well. Um, just a minute. I will open a transaction like because it looks a bit different than the normal transaction that we do via an EOA. So we'll just talk about that as well.
Nice. Just how it looks in Etherscan, basically.
Yeah, I'm just opening the
No,
same.
that's definitely helpful because we've been doing a bunch of
Okay.
demos, as I said, with some account abstracted providers. So knowing how they look is actually very helpful.
Right. So here, so this is an example of like a transaction done using our bundler and our SDK. So here you can see like each event, like each transaction will emit this particular event called user operation event, and you can find the corresponding user op hash. So, okay, a quick overview on the user op. So a transaction is called a user op in the context of account abstraction. That's basically like just some different fields than we have in the normal transaction. So, and you can find more about it on the website as well. So yeah, it's like it's basically a transaction, and you can
It's like
and
a
we also use.
transaction with some extra data to allow them to do a bunch of things, correct?
Yes, and we primarily use like Jiffy scan to search for the user operation hash. This is another way where a lot of people get confused, and they tend to search the user of hash in the Etherscan or like all of these scanner. So we always get like a user of hash for each transaction, and like Jiffy scan essentially like matches that transaction with the block scan transactions. I don't know why it's not like coming up here now, but it
Was it on
usually
testnet or something?
could be. No, it's okay, it's the hex. I think I had to paste. So you can scan for the user op hash from the Jiffy scan, and then you can get the corresponding transaction hash and search for it in the block scan. So coming back to the transaction, so like each transaction gets executed by the bundler. So this is the address of Biconomy bundler here, and like the two address will be the entry point address.
Mhm.
So this is like one of the major difference that like any EOA transaction that you do, in that the from address is usually the EOA account from which you're doing it. But you can always see like the smart account address in the sender here. So what happens is like about bundler. So bundler essentially like whenever smart account wants to execute a transaction, we need someone to pay for gas fees, and that's what bundler does. It essentially acts as an EOA or like an account. I mean, you can think of like a decentralized relay kind of account which executes the transaction on user's behalf. And that's why like you will always see like the from address as any bundler address who will be executing those transactions. And this is essentially the user op and all the fields that get passed. The other important field is the paymaster and data field. So you will find this field as like empty field like 0x if the transaction is not sponsored by the paymaster. So if it is sponsored by the paymaster, you will definitely find like some data here which signifies that okay, paymaster is managing the gas fees for this transaction. So this is an example of a gasless transaction, and I mean that's where the paymaster and data field come into picture. And this is essentially like a user op example that we just talked about. So yeah, I mean, as we just discussed, that bundler essentially pays for the gas fee initially, and then it gets that refund either from the smart account who will pay the gas fee, or if they're using Paymaster, Paymaster will pay the gas fee to the same beneficiary, which is the bundler itself. I think we went a lot into detail here, but I will be coming back to the docs. Um, yes, I mean you can do a gasless transaction. You can also like your users can pay the transaction in form of ERC20 tokens as well. There are like many other benefits with smart accounts like transaction batching. Um, so in normally like you would first like approve a token if you wish to like transfer it to some other account, and then you will do like a transfer transaction. So all those kind of transactions can be easily batched using smart account. So that's another like benefit of using
Yeah,
smart
I
account.
wanna maybe double click on that a little bit because it's pretty powerful. So with you know, like with the smart wallets that we looked at, like they don't actually support bundling, right? They're created for a very special thing, right? They're created to like make the transaction flow nice and things look well. But with Biconomy's tool, right, you can actually bundle transactions for like all sorts of things in different use cases. So I just want to like double click on that and call out for you guys to pay attention here particularly.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is a very important feature that gets used across. Uh, I mean, because I mean, you can definitely like batch as many number of transactions here depending on the type of chain and the block size. And Then the other important thing is like either all of these transactions will be executed at once or none of these will be executed, because there could be that one transaction is dependent on the other transaction also. So it's like one or like none kind of
Is
situation
the
here.
order that they put in here the order that they're executed in?
Yes, yes.
Cool.
Yeah, and so this is about like the smart account and the inbuilt functionalities in that. But the other most important thing that I would want to talk about is the modules. So what so modules are essentially like an enhancement on top of the functionalities that we just discussed. So we discussed about, for example, the gasless transactions, right? Now, like there are use cases where, you would want to do, let's say, all of those things on multiple chains at once. Or, sorry.
Oh, I just said, oh, wow. That's
Oh,
cool.
yeah. So, yeah, I mean, the multi-chain validation module is super cool in that way that, let's say, if you want to execute the same like if you want to execute the transaction on Polygon and on Ethereum at once, I mean, you would want, so in typically you would need, like user would need to sign it twice, like on for each chain. But using this module, user will need to sign only once, and I mean, it's like sign once and execute on multiple blockchain at once. What it essentially does is like each transaction is like appended in a Merkle tree, and the root of that tree is being signed by the user at once. So, I mean, there are like multiple use cases and how it is being built. So yeah, I mean, essentially this is what we talked about, that we calculate all the user ops that we need to sign, we calculate the user op hash, and then instead of signing the individual hashes, we sign the Merkle root of that particular tree. So I mean, this is essentially useful if your dApp is like live on multiple chains. But again, this is also being used by a lot of other clients that we have. And I mean, that's where the modular smart accounts come into picture, that you can always create these kind of functionalities on top of these accounts. And Biconomy smart accounts are like modular. So if you want to build your own module as well, based on your use case, you can always build that and you can use it with our smart accounts as well. So there is like a definite method, to write like a module. You need to implement a few methods in that particular module, and then you can essentially raise a PR, and we can also integrate it in our SDK as well. The other important module is the session module. So this is like an important feature where, let's say, if users want to, like if dApp wants to create sessions, like in our normal apps, like Web2 apps, we have concept of session. Like either your login will expire after 24 hours, or however the app has created those sessions. So similarly, you can create sessions with smart accounts. So what it means is, like, for example, if you want to give like a session, like if you want to create a policy that your session should be applicable for let's say this 12 hours, and it should only execute this particular type of transaction. So for those 12 hours, you don't need to sign again and again. Like you can directly do the transaction. Like you won't need to sign it again with the signer. So that's where the session keys come into picture, that like one single private key, like you can use to sign all those transactions at once. And this is very important in gaming, or like trading dApps. And there was a very cool like demo which was
open a long position with
which was presented
$10 of collateral.
So I'll just share it for now, and then we can move ahead.
Sure. I know the first time I used an app with a session key setup and account abstraction, I was like absolutely blown away. Like, because I was like, is this Web 2? Like, because you don't have to sign anymore. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, clearly. So now you can see like we will be doing another transaction, and the user won't need to sign it. Can like directly just like submit it. So yeah, I mean, you can like, there are many policies that you can define. So this is essentially done, like that particular transaction, and it did not like require like a signer explicitly.
Yeah, so the first time you had to like fund the session, and then after that you was able to just sign.
Yeah. So you can like find all the contract details here, like the multi-chain validation module. This is the contract address for that, and like the session key module, this is for that. And then there is like batched session as well, which is like another enhancement on top of the session module that we just discussed. So yeah, I mean, one thing that I wanted to highlight was that Biconomy smart accounts are like modular, and you are free to create or use all of these modules. There are many like open source modules as well that and people have created, so you can even use those as well.
So modules are smart contracts. Can you explain that linkage there for me a little bit more?
Yes. So for example, let's see this multi-chain validation module, and
so it's a smart contract that understands multiple chains, I guess.
yeah. So let me just go back to our docs again, and then so like how a transaction gets executed is like you need to define a validation module. like in each of the like whenever you initialize a smart account, you need to define a validation module. So by default, this validation module is the ECDSA validation module. But what you can do is you can define it as a multi-chain validation module as well. And that's what we like, let's say this is like, these are the three methods like any module needs to implement. So if you see this, right, this multi-chain module, you will see that it's implementing the same validate user op method. So this module will validate that if user op will be executed by the smart account or not. So this is like maintaining all the signing, and it's making sure that, you know, that particular leaf is also part of the hash or not.
Yeah, okay, I remember this now from reading the 457 spec. You have to like validate everything in simulation before you can submit it to the mempool or whatever the alt mempool, correct?
Yes, yes, yes. So yes, you're right. I mean, like if it can be executed on all of these chains, like the multi-chain, that logic will be part of this module contract. Likewise, the sessions also, you can find the code and you can see like how these methods are being implemented. So in the validation module, you will see these, and similarly, like this is how you can create your own validation module as well. So I remember someone created with Schnorr signature scheme. So if you don't want to use, let's say, ECDSA, you can create your other validation module as well. So these are all examples.
Yeah. Oh, so you can actually validate other signature schemes, basically.
Yes, yes. And it's
That's
very,
kind of huge.
yeah, yes, yes, definitely. So yeah, this was about modules, but yes, I mean, if you are new to account abstraction and if you want to try out, I would recommend you first understand like how a gasless transaction is implemented. And I would highly request everybody to also go through the basics of account abstraction as well. I mean, it is a bit complicated concept. So it's definitely recommended to understand the jargons and what each of let's say this contract or like let's say what bundler is. So it's good to have that basic information before getting started with the tutorials. Yeah, I think then I mean there are like the other. So you can also use, like you can also use the bundler and paymaster with the APIs as well. These APIs are created based on the ERC 4337 spec, and like the bundler exposes all of these methods. So you can essentially like use APIs to even, you know, get, like if you are not building in TypeScript, you can make use of these APIs to send a user operation. And that's what essentially the API integration talks about. So if you want to like use the APIs, you can like follow these tutorials and make the API calls directly
Yeah,
to the
so this is like instead of using your SDK, if you wanted to call directly into the bundler as if it was an RPC, this is how you would interact
Yes.
with it, correct? Yeah, okay.
So these are the examples of that. And then the other actually very cool thing which I wanted to show was around the utilities. Okay. So I mean, this is something we got a lot of requests around. So I mean, for example, like you have a smart account and now you want to transfer the ownership of that smart account to another account. Right now, we just discussed that, okay, you create a smart account and that is being controlled by, like, you know, a signer. Now we call it like an EOA1. Now you want to transfer it to another signer. So this is how, like, essentially you just need to execute one transaction saying the transfer ownership to the new owner. And then your smart account will be controlled by the new key that you have passed here. So Yes, I mean, this is also particularly useful where, if you happen to lose the key, I mean, yeah, if you lose the key, then of course, yeah, I
You
mean, if
need
you
like
think
an
that your key
MPC
is at
wallet
risk,
to transfer ownership or something.
yeah, I mean, if you think that your key is at risk, so you can definitely make it, you can transfer the ownership to a new owner as soon as possible. So these are some of the things that are possible with smart account. And why is that possible is because we can write the code, like how the smart account is built, all of these functionalities you can write when you build the smart account contract, yeah, which you cannot do with an EOA, like it has very limited functionalities. So these are some of the things I mainly wanted to talk about. And then another thing is like the dashboard that we just saw. So for example, like you want to create, let's go to the dashboard for now. Yeah. So let's go to, yeah. For example, you want to create a paymaster via an API. So these
Oh,
are
nice.
all like APIs via which you can create the paymaster. You can add funds to a paymaster via an API because it's essentially like a function on a contract. So I mean, you can use all the dashboard APIs for that. Like if you want to see all the list of paymasters you have created, you want to create a new paymaster, or like you want to like whitelist a smart contract. This essentially means is that you are saying that your paymaster can sponsor transactions for this particular contract. So there are like these sort of like rules, or whitelisting is enabled in the dashboard. So a lot of these things can be done via the APIs as well.
Nice. Yeah, so they can
Yeah.
do it programmatically as well as through the dashboard.
Yeah, because most of the people like sometimes like prefer doing it via the APIs. So yeah, I mean all of here.
Yeah, if you
And
want like a user to set up paymaster for themselves, you can do it. So basically.
that's correct. Uh, is there anything that we should cover further? I think this should be
No,
good
I
to,
think this was a pretty thorough overview of everything there.
yeah,
Yeah,
and
thanks
if
for walking us through it.
yeah, if you have like any question, feel free to post it on our discussions. Like we will be happy to answer those. We also have like a closed Telegram group as well. I will be sharing the invite with you, Kevin, and if
Awesome.
anybody wants to join, feel free to reach out to me, and I'll be happy to help you get onboarded to our stack.
Yeah, awesome. I'll definitely share that with our community and anyone who's interested. So just hit me up if you are. If anyone does have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself and ask, or type something in the chat. I know this was actually probably one of our more in-depth sessions. Account abstraction is not the easiest topic. There's so many moving pieces to it. And so, yeah, like, thanks for walking us through it. If anyone hasn't read the EIP 4337 spec, I would encourage you to go do it. It's actually like quite complicated, but like, yeah, very much worth it. So let's see. Yeah, and then Munchie just threw up her Twitter. Go ahead and give her a follow in case you guys have any questions. It's some pretty powerful stuff, this account abstraction stuff. We've seen Capsule and Privy, right? These like wallets that make it very easy to sign in with social sign-in. And the whole reason that they're even possible to be able to be built is because of this account abstraction stuff. So I wanted to bring Biconomy on here in case you guys, wanted to do something even more custom, right? I think one of the more powerful things is bundling, right? If you really just want to get rid of that, like approve and send transaction flow on the EVM, you can just bundle both of those into a single transaction via 457, right? So even for smaller use cases where you're just trying to, marginally improve the UX of your app, like some of these tools are very, very powerful. Thank you for sending through some of these docs here. I'm going to take note of them and I will provide links to them after. But what were you going to say? Go for it. Oh, I didn't mean to cut you off there. My bad. Taking notes on the docs you're sending through here. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and pause the recording and then we can wrap up here. So